Welcome to another episode of the CC Podcast Conversations, where inspiring Christians share their faith-filled stories. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. This helps push our content to a broader audience. Are you new to listening? Check out our other podcasts. First, the CC Podcast Daily Dose Devotions, where we're walking through the Bible, focusing on short clips of Scripture. Second is the CC Broadcast, where our weekly radio programming is archived. These podcasts are available wherever you're listening or at ChristianCrusaders.org. Okay, let's get started with today's episode. Here's our host, Matt Reisetter, the Executive Director of Christian Crusaders.
So one of the things that we do here at the Bible Conference is when we get a speaker who we want to do a little podcast interview with, good time to grab them, and this will be published on the Christian Crusaders Radio and Internet Ministry Conversations podcast, kind of a long-form conversation podcast in that ministry that I also lead. David, thank you for saying yes. How's the tooth?
Tooth is good.
Dr. Bauk told me that you're pregnant.
Yes.
With a boy.
Yes. So we go lay. I go sit in the seat, and Dr. Bauk went with the dentist who was seeing me. And they went back and looked at my x-rays and all that stuff, and he came back out, and they were like, well, here's the news. And Dr. Brock told me, he goes, you're pregnant. And I told him, I said, that explains the recent weight gain and the water retention and the mood swings. And so maybe in 9 months, things will get better.
I said, kind of debating him a little bit, I said, hey, you need to let us pay for that. That was the agreement that I made with him this morning.
Oh, that was so kind.
And he said, no, it's whatever. And he said, and I didn't charge him for my diagnosis.
That's right. They were so gracious. I'm so thankful, because I don't know how you are, but like it's the worst thing when your mouth is just on fire, and you're not hurting. And it was just good to be at a place where you got a guy who's got a guy, and friends in good places. So
yes,
thankful
sir.
for that.
Thanks again, Brian.
Amen.
So we're going to do 45 minutes. And I've got a few questions I'm going to throw out. I just want to give this disclaimer. I've worked pretty hard, and we have worked pretty hard as the Cedar Falls Bible Conference to stay out of a lot of political stuff from the stage during the Bible Conference. I'm going to ask him, and you might have questions for him that are of
says the future governor of this state right here, by the way.
Yeah. So anyway,
let's go, governor.
Okay, so anyway, we may touch on some political things. The intent isn't to kind of subversively be political, but just we booked. I was going to go back and look, but we booked David, I believe, right before the United States went into Iran, and I remember thinking, man, this is providential because we're going to have a guy who's going to have a lot to say about that, and a lot of background knowledge with us. And so anyway, we might have some questions of that nature. Let's just get started with an easy one. How did your dad get to the place where within 5 or 6 years he could take you shopping for designer clothes and buy you a car?
Yeah,
and he had nothing.
Yeah, so when we came to the United States, we had basically lost everything. My parents, and all this is in a book called Jumping Through Fires that's the movie's going to be based on, but my parents took some jewelry, Matt, and they we're talking just a little bit of gold and some different things, and they took my baby brother's stroller, and they opened up the seam, and then they stuffed some jewelry kind of in some of the corners, and then they took a bag, and they took the lining out and stuffed some jewelry. And so that was about $20,000 back then worth of jewelry that they were able to kind of come to Switzerland with. So they had a little bit of funding that quickly went away, like that got spent in the 9 months that we were in Switzerland and in Germany. And then when we got to the United States, my dad had what I call just Iranian work hustle, like that Middle Eastern cultural I grew up in a household that was very much, you got time to lean, you got time to clean, and so my dad's incredible hard work ethic just proved to be fruitful for him, and so my dad just worked really, really hard, and he started a Oriental rug shop, Persian rug shop, and then he started a cross knitting needlepoint store and different things, and he was just good at hard work. And so by the time I had reached high school, my freshman year in high school, my parents were pretty much upper middle class. Cool. And they're just a testament, honestly, in one sense, of just good, strong, elbow grease, but also just the American dream, that this is the land of opportunity, and that if you're willing to come here and sweat, that there's just so many opportunities to thrive in the greatest nation in the world, which is the United States. But,
very cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Iran. So I personally, again, under my disclaimer, I'm just going to be transparent with where I was at with this thing. If Iran, who's been calling us the great Satan and who wants to wipe Israel off the map and who wants to do all these things, gets a nuclear weapon, that's a problem. And actually, that's not a partisan problem. Every president for the last several presidents has said that. This is the first time anyone's done anything about it. I have been initially supportive of this deal. I was under the impression that it would not drag on to the degree that it has, and I understand in saying that it hasn't drug on as long as many conflicts that the United States has been involved in. I feel like we've been told multiple times that this thing is won, there's a peace deal, da-da-da, blah, blah, blah. Is this ever, is it even possible for this to end, or is this a deal where, and where are the Iranian people that were going to rise up and like do the revolution after we took out the top guys?
Yeah.
Just give us your analysis of this. You told me in the green room you've been on Fox News the last 10 times in the last month, so you're kind of viewed as an expert on these matters. Tell us what you see.
Yeah, well, lots to talk about through there, but and we can just kind of free flow in and out. Feel free to ask whatever that maybe if I leave some meat on the bones here on this. But I believe, and this is I can't speak for 93 million Iranian people. No one can represent an entire nation worth of people, nor the diaspora, the Iranians that don't live in Iran, that are living in America and in Paris and Dubai and wanting to see a day where they can return back to Iran. But from my seat in the stands, I believe that Iran has been waging war against the Western world for over 40 years. That Iran, when you think about the bombing in Beirut, or when you think about that Iran funded, when you think about September 11th, that Iran funded, when you think about just so many different moments in our history where Iran has constantly been, wanting to see death to America. When the IRGC, when you hear people constantly yelling death to America, at what point do you begin to believe them? At what point do you begin to think, wow, they're showing their cards? And that's certainly not speaking for the 93 million people in Iran, but it is speaking for the clerics, the religious zealots that drive the governance, and it is certainly speaking for the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, who are evil in my assessment. And so I think they've been waging war against the United States and against the Western world, and really what we believe and what we hold dear: democracy and freedom of religion, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of voting, for all these different years. And so we certainly can't give the capacity. I mean, we cannot have Iran have a nuclear weapon, and so that's happening on our watch. And so I believe that there's a responsibility that we have for our children, my grandkids in Tennessee, your grandkids in Iowa, to stop Iran from being able to have that capacity. Because once they have it, once Iran becomes, a nuclear nation, then all of a sudden it's like North Korea. At that point, then if you think they're hard to deal with now with the Strait of Hormuz, if you think Iran is hard to negotiate with now, what's it look like when they have an actual nuclear weapon? And at what point do we feel like that's a safer world for any of us, right? And so I think the people in Iran, Matt, the overwhelming majority of people in Iran, out of the 93 million that live there, saw what happened 5 months ago when we all woke up and we saw that America and Israel were bombing Iran, not at their detriment, but at their betterment, and are grateful that Iran is coming to, that America and Israel are actually coming to the rescue of the Iranian people. Certainly with self-interest to see no nuclear weapons there, but so I would say that the overwhelming people of Iran are not represented by the IRGC and by the clerics, and that we have to rise up against these tyrants that have been waging war all along against us. And we certainly can't give them a nuclear weapon. And I know it's cost, billions and billions of dollars. And I don't want to Jesus juke somebody who says, I don't want to pay $5 for gas. I don't either. I don't want to see my 401k plan, take a tumble. Just like we've all worked hard for every penny that God's blessed us with, amen? And I don't want to see 25% loss on my stocks and everything. I'm a senior citizen, I'm officially at the place in my life where I don't have 20 years for it to bounce back. And so when people see that and the economy that is affected by this war and all these different things, I'm with them. I don't want to see that. But at the same time, none of that is going to be nearly as expensive as of Iran having a nuclear weapon. Can you imagine if there's if Iran bombed Israel? What would that do to our 401k? What would that do to the price of oil? What would that do to our security of life? And so this is a preemptive measure to begin to stand up against an evil regime who really wants to rob us of our very way of life. And so to me, it is expensive, and I'd love to see it come to a place where the people of Iran are free. But at the same time, I see it as a necessary. And I think people sometimes don't have the stamina for doing the right thing when sometimes it just takes longer than we hope. And I agree with you, Matt. I think that we were all hoping that this would be kind of like Venezuela. This would be the kind of thing where we'd blow in, blow up, and blow out. And that the people of Iran would be able to step into the moment and step in. But this is a complex thing. And the Strait of Hormuz it is really their weapon, right, of mass of mass consumption more than anything else. And so this is going to be a complicated war, and I think it's going to take a lot of years to see it really make treadway. But I do believe that the people of Iran want to see liberation, and that this is ultimately their war to fight. And I think that as expensive as this has been for the world, not just financially, but for all of us, as expensive as this has been in the last 5-6 months, that today there's a weaker Iran. And at the very least, their nuclear capacities have been kicked, the can has been kicked further down. And hopefully, they're more prone to topple than they have been, I think, in my lifetime. So I feel like we're closest we've ever been to seeing the IRGC overthrown.
Is your dad still alive?
My dad passed away last year. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was very loyal to the Shah of Iran. He was very loyal to the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi. And my dad had dreams of wanting to go back and go back to Iran and serve. Wow. But he didn't get to see that.
We were talking in the back. You like 80s rock and roll. I like 80s rock and roll. If you were 9 in '79, you're 5 or 6 years older than me.
Yeah.
This is a really random question. I didn't write it down. There was a classic movie back in the day called Iron Eagle.
Okay.
Did you watch it?
No.
Okay, never mind then.
I need to watch
it.
it.
It was the U.S. versus Iran.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which was interesting in the 80s. I was going to just ask you what you thought of that.
The one Iranian movie people always bring up is Not Without My Daughter. Anybody see that movie? Where the gentleman marries, Sally Fields, I think, is the star in it, and she marries an Iranian man, and then he takes the kids, takes them to Iran, and he doesn't, and the family, and then she's trying to get her daughter out of Iran. But that's the one movie with Iranians.
Iron Eagle.
But we're making a new movie, y'all, called Jumping Through Fires. All right, so that's going to be fun.
Tell us about the movie. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so we've been for years talking about just telling my story in movie format. And right before COVID, Sony Provident graciously came and said, look, we want to sign this. I had written a book called Jumping Through Fires where I tell my life story. And so they signed, Sony signed what they call a development deal, where they own the rights to the book and they begin to develop it. The next stage past that becomes where they go to the script writing, and then from there, just continues to move forward. But all that got signed. There was a lot of excitement around it, and then COVID happened. And once COVID happened, Provident Films started to kind of fizz out a little bit. The guy on the team that was the president of the film company there moved on to another film company and didn't take me with him, and everything. And so years ago, we had an opportunity to tell the story in a movie format, and that faded away. And then recently, my friend Bart Millard and my friend Scott, who's
That's a real bless you reason to say bless
thank you, bro. Right? Yeah. If you want to be blessed, just sneeze. They'll bless you around here. But a few of my friends in Nashville said, hey, we've been reading the book, and we feel like it's a great story to tell. It really points to the gospel, and the church gets it right in your story. America gets it right in your story. But ultimately, God gets it right in your story, and we want to tell your story. And so we were talking for a long time about the opportunity to make a movie. And so very recently, they just signed it. And it feels like it's going to be a much bigger project than it originally was. And I'm really excited about getting to tell the story, because even as I was sharing it tonight, you don't have to be from Iran to have interest in it. I mean, I think people are going to just hear about the power of God and in the life of an individual. And what I didn't get a whole lot into meeting my wife and our relationship there, but I think, the movie is going to really, I think, veer into that part of it as well. And I really do feel like as we look at the movie, in one sense, the antagonist won't be like Iran. I think 10 minutes into the movie, we're out of Iran, We're out of, like, there'll be some dramatic beginning where, like, you got this young family and they're trying to get out of Iran. But I think we come to America fairly early in the story. And really the antagonist becomes my dad. My dad was the one who kicked me out of the house when I became a Christian. My dad was the one who disowned me. My dad was the one who ridiculed me for my faith. And then my dad was the one who eventually became a Christian. And so to see, the zero become the hero, to see the guy that kicks you out by the end of the movie being the guy that I'm baptizing, it's just, I think it's a testament to the power of the gospel. And so, and then my wife, Jennifer, she's a sweet Southern girl from Alabama, and precious and just beautiful. And I think our love story is going to be a big part of this as well. And the unlikely, love story of, like, this girl who grew up in the church, very sheltered, very sweet. And then you got this kid, from Iran, and then she ends up marrying this kid. And can you imagine the culture clash of our families and all that? So that's going to be unpacked. It's in the book, and so that's going to be unpacked in the movie too. So I wouldn't be surprised if the movie ends up actually being more about, like, an unlikely romance than it is about, like, some dramatic Muslim to Islam to Christian story. But script hasn't been written yet, so that's kind of in the next stage of where it's going. But it all just got signed recently. And
what's the timeline?
Well, typically it takes about 2.5 years to make a movie. All right, so now it's gonna go into they're trying to find the right person to write the script. And here's what they told me too. This is interesting language. They said, there's a portrait and then there's a painting. And a portrait is like, if I take a picture of you with my phone, I'm getting you. But if you get me to draw you, I'm kind of getting you, all right? And they said, hey, whenever we make a movie, we want to tell the best story. And so you need to tell us what are the non-negotiables that like, no matter what, need to be in the story. Because in movie land, what they do is they really do more of telling they do a portrait based on, does that make sense, than they do actual. And so it's not like I'm going to be Puerto Rican and not Iranian or whatever. I'm going to be Iranian. And the main things are going to happen. But like when you watch I Can Only Imagine, which these are the same people that did I Can Only Imagine, the movie, there are pieces of it that they just condense for the sake of movie land to tell the movie faster. And you're not lying. So I even asked, I said, well, what does that mean if I'm doing an interview or a podcast about the movie? They're like, oh, you can tell the truth. I mean, you can always say, I said, what if I met my wife right after high school, and or after high school? What if they said, what if in the movie she meets you in high school, and they go, so you met your wife in high school in an interview? I can say, no, that's Movie Land. We met after. But that's what movies do. They kind of mash up, you know. And so there's a little bit of that. And I'm not sure where it's all going to go. But we definitely know this, that the one non-negotiable in my movie is that we want the gospel told. And we want people to see it. And one of the things that I really have a lot of stake in the movie is I'm in a place in my life where I don't need this movie to do well, to make a living. You know, I'm so blessed. We don't need this movie to be able to be booked at events. I mean, I say this with all humility. Like, I get to do 2% of my invites. You know what I mean? I pray about every invite. And
Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah, bro. This felt to me like the kind of a gift that God. And we prayed about this one, and we said yes. And I also, Greg Oliver trusts you, and he said, David, this is a great event. But I say that to say, I'm not looking for more bookings. I'm not looking for a way to pay my bills. So what I want out of this. So when you go, well, why would you want this movie? I'm not looking for fame. You know, and what I want out of this movie is I want to reach Muslims. I have a vision of like a movie premiere in Iran. I have a vision of people watching this that aren't necessarily churchgoers, that have been caught in the trap of Islam, and maybe would watch my movie, and I would get to call them to be set free from it. And so that is my great agenda in this, that I'm reaching an over-churched or a religious group of people who don't have redemption. And so that has been, so they're like, so, you know, what do you think about us maybe making the movie do this or this and this? I'm like, the one non-negotiable for me is that we thread it with the full gospel message.
Good.
And past that, that's where I'm going to be stubborn and pretty much double down. Everything else, like, sure. You know, so you're probably getting more than you want from a movie perspective, but I'm really pumped about it. I think if the Lord blesses it and it happens, it could be fun to, you know. Also, honestly, it's fun to leave something for your great-grandkids that they can watch and go, that was my great-granddad, you know, and let's look what God did. And all a movie does is a movie just is 2 hours of just, hopefully for me, 2 hours of just being a gospel track that you hand to somebody, you know. And yeah.
Have you seen the new Michael Jackson biopic?
Yes,
His dad's kind of the antagonist in that movie.
That's right.
But they never make him the hero.
That's right.
Because he never really becomes the hero. But did that make you think about your story at all?
Yeah,
how they might depict your dad?
Yeah, I watched the Michael Jackson documentary, and some of those undertones in the Michael Jackson story where his father is really the driving force of so much of his success. Like you can't have Michael Jackson without having an overbearing father who pushed him to that kind of excellence and pushed his family to the place where he became prominent. But at the same time, in order to push him to that, it made him better, but it also made him bitter. Yep. You know, and some of you might know like an overbearing father in your life who was like and my father is one of my greatest heroes in life. But at the same time, I also know that he was a strongly prideful man, and that and I also get it. Like it's complex. Like Matt, he had first of all, when my dad escaped from Iran, that was a gift to his children and his wife. My dad would have rather stayed and died in Iran. The harder thing for my dad the easier thing would have been to stay and die. The harder thing would have been to escape, but he did that for us. You got to know my dad to believe that. But I'm just telling you, like, anybody who's here who's military, anybody here military, you get it. You'd rather die than that. Like, you feel like there's more honor in that. Like, and so military guys shake their head when I tell that part about my dad. My dad it would have been so much easier. So it was always a gift that he gave us that he left. So that's not lost on me. Second, he had lost his heritage. He had lost his position in the army. He had lost his pedigree. He'd given up so much. And now, because of, in his mind, when I was 18 and I gave my life to Christ, because of my conversion, he had now lost his religion. And it's kind of like that coat in your closet that you never wear until your wife wants to give it away. And all of a sudden, I love that coat. I think my dad's religion wasn't a big deal to him until I gave it away. And to him, he was like, we've lost all of these things. And now because of my son, we've lost our religion too. Look, he just threw it away. Yeah. And so and so pride comes up, you know. And so I think that was the tension there. And I do hope in the movie that he's just not made a villain of like, wow, he kicked you out of the house. I hope that they take 60 seconds to let that be shown, the humanity of that really rides. By the way, that's true when someone leaves Catholicism. And I'm not saying you can be a Catholic and be a believer, but a lot of Catholics are not believers. Or when if you leave Mormonism, or people who leave like, Buddhism, and you're leaving, and you're. I can't tell you how often I talk to a Muslim who doesn't want to give their life to Christ because they don't want to dishonor their family. And I have to convince them, no, you're stopping a generational curse. You're actually honoring your family, right? And so that tension's there, and I hope that they explore it in the movie. In the book we do. And my father, that was in him, that was embedded in him. And so it just took it took the work of the Holy Spirit for him to eventually come to Christ. His conversion story is my favorite story in the book, in my book, Jumping Through Fires. I don't know if it'll make the movie, but I think of all the Nassers that came to Christ, what God did to bring him home was my favorite Nasser conversion moment. Yeah, but
another movie that I think of is the Unashamed Phil Robertson movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he started off as the hardcore villain and was the hero.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see how they do that.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the norm in the kingdom. You got the first time we see the Apostle Paul. Yep. He's at the Lion's Gate, right? He's literally an accomplice to Stephen's murder. And so you don't get more villain than that. Second frame, he's on the Damascus Road to take out the people of the way. And then the Lord meets him there. He becomes a believer, right? And then he becomes the most quoted man in the history of the world for the glory of God. I mean, he becomes... So anybody here named Paul? Named after him. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're welcome. And so he goes from the absolute, like, bad guy to the good guy. And all of us have that story to tell. And that's the power of the gospel. That someone in their journey can go from Saul to Paul. And then my dad, who would make fun of me and ridicule me for sharing the gospel, was later on just like handing out my book like his Tic Tacs to all of his friends and constantly going, I need one more box of books, and so like just for me to know that my father was like giving away our testimony, to people was just only the work of the Holy Spirit, that he would go from this to that.
Cool. Do you get any say in who plays you?
I told them, I said, I just hope that some little fat Mexican kid doesn't play me. He could be Mexican. I just don't want him to be fat. Is that going to make the podcast?
That's
Sorry.
great. That's great. Okay.
I thought it was a joke, and I thought it was funny. No. I don't think I get to have much say. I just hope whoever it is that there's a vulnerability to the character. I think the most important part of it. And who comes in is that whoever plays it actually believes in it, and it comes out of their pores. I pray it's a person of faith and not just somebody who's playing a Christian, because they're gonna know like what drives this young kid to do all the things that he's doing, what's driving, and maybe somebody who's has some baggage in life. I went through a lot of tough moments in my life, and so it's hard to know what it's like to be alone, to be bullied, and to play that role if you hadn't been. So yeah, who knows who's going to play him? But who's going to play Matt in my movie?
Nah,
Kevin Costner.
I'll just come watch it. Kevin Costner. Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah,
Rocky
there you
IV.
go.
We got 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And we won't bust through as many questions as we have. We got to get him out of here. He's preaching in the morning. Donna, right there. I'm going to repeat your question so that's on the air.
Hey, Miss Donna. Yes, ma'am. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run down there and give you the microphone so we can all hear you. How's that? Is that okay? All right.
It's about the people in Iran because, as I understand, they don't have any weapons. They've had all that taken away. And so that's part of the reason they can't rise up and do anything right now at this point.
Yeah, Ms. Donna. Yeah, the people of Iran, they're in a pickle. in the sense that earlier, about a year ago, about 40,000 Iranians were massacred and killed when they did try to rise up against the IRGC and these mullahs. And they just literally, thank you so much, they literally took the lives of thousands and thousands, like tens of thousands of, come on, bro. I already broke a tooth. Let's just break a tooth. But so yes, I think it's hard to fight a wealthy army that has a wealth of weapons and army. And by the way, the IRGC is so corrupt. They make it illegal to have alcohol, but yet they are the ones who on the black market sell alcohol. They ban the internet, but they're the ones who sell the SIM cards on the black market. So you know what I'm saying? So they are the mafia. They're not really religious. They are evil, and so yes, a big part of this is the fact that the people would be hitting the streets, fighting people that have the ability to just empty the clip on them, and they don't have weapons. The United States tried to get weapons to Iran, to the Kurdish sect of people, but the Kurdish just took the weapons and put them in their back pocket, and so this is complex, and I do, though, however, not want to underestimate Mossad. I think if there's anyone who can embed itself into a culture and embed itself into the veins of getting things, it would be Mossad, right? And so I think that's going on now. But here's the hope that I would have in all of this. Physical weapons, yes. The Iranian people need them, and they don't have them in order to be able to fight. Spiritual weapons, yes. The fastest growing church in the world today, the fastest growing church in the world today is the underground church in Iran. And so God is not contained in what he's doing in Iran. And so God is rising up an army of believers, not revolutionaries, but revivalists in Iran. And that's my biggest stake for the people of Iran, that they would see that freedom fighter in that sense. And I'll tell you what God's doing right now. Like, we're talking about, like, America, President Trump. We try to get weapons, and it just doesn't happen. Well, God doesn't need us to do it. Like, literally tens of thousands of Iranians are having dreams of the man in the white robe. Jesus is appearing to them in the white robe. And so then when the church in Iran is approaching them with the gospel, they're just like, I've already been dreaming about Jesus. Tell me more. And so that is the weapon that no enemy can form against, right? That God is working. And so I don't want you to think about Iran and just think about hopelessness. I want you to know that God is up to something really great. As a matter of fact, it's fine to think of Iran as a geopolitical mindset. Like, when you think about Iran right now, that's certainly a geopolitical event that's going on, that's massive, and it's probably the biggest thing that's happening right now outside of the war in Ukraine and Russia. However, I want you to primarily think of it as a people who God is converting left and right now. And the 93 million people in Iran, by the way, are highly secular. It's a young nation, and most of them are not devout Muslims. They're done with Islam. But they're very interested in the things of God. And so that's why we're seeing a young revival happening in Iran, like we've never experienced in our lives. And, Iranians, we think of them as like people across the world that, here's the thing I always like to tell people. How old are you, sir? 70, all right. Think of a 70-year-old in Iran, and then think about the fact that they probably like what you like. You know what I mean? I'm 55. The number one TV show for a 55-year-old man in Iran is The Office. Okay. Yeah. The number one artist for a 14-year-old girl in Iran is Taylor Swift. Does that make sense? Like, they are listening to what we're listening to, watching what we're watching. They're wearing the same makeup, wearing the same clothes, under the shroud. Iran is the nose job capital of the world. And one of the reasons it's the nose job capital of the world is that little white Band-Aid is worn as, it's not for vanity. It is one of the expressions of freedom allowed in Iran anymore for a woman. I had a family member who was caught wearing lipstick, and the way they cleaned her lips is they took a towel, but they put razor in it, and they were just, and so, like, she's not allowed to wear lipstick, but she's allowed to have a nose job. And so you can't continue to oppress people like that and starve people like that and crash their economy down. There's a moment where, weapon or no weapon, they're going to rise up. But what I'm more interested in, Donna, than the revolution, and I want to see democracy in Iran. What I'm more interested in is the revival in Iran. I'm really feeling like that's the biggest thing that God is doing right now. And in this moment, if it becomes a democracy, if Iran does topple over and it becomes a democracy, it could be the church's finest hour, because they no longer have to be the underground church. They can rise up. But if it doesn't, and they're the underground church, they're already the fastest growing church in the world. And we got to figure out ways to get inroads and to help them. We just started, for anyone who might be interested, we just started revivaliran.com. And in the past 5 months, I've been a voice of advocacy through Fox and different media outlets for the church in Iran. But then also, we've been raising funds, and so every penny that has been coming our way from churches that have given to us, donors that have given to us, we're putting right into the underground church in Iran. And we found all these underground church networks, and we've been empowering them. And so when the power gets shut down, the underground church is even more heroic. When the medication is hard to come by, the underground church is the one. So they've become the resourcing arm. And that's why I think they've stepped in and they're seeing such converts, because they've met needs to connect people to earn the right to share gospel truth. Does that make sense? And so just in the last 5 months, we've raised well over $150,000. I'm not a fundraiser, but just people just coming up going, we care about what God's doing in Iran. Here you go. And we've been and every penny that's come in, we've just taken and we put right into the underground church in Iran. And what we're doing is we're letting them have the resources to be able to be heroes in the trenches. And they're leveraging that to do what we do here in America, right? They're leveraging that to share the gospel, meet everyday needs, so that they can earn the right to speak redemptive truth. And so I'm giving you that to say 2 things are true about weapons. They need physical weapons to fight a good fight, and we need to pray for that kind of provision. But they already have the biggest weapon, right? The spiritual warfare that's going on. The church in Iran is not on its heels. It is winning. And we need to be praying that it'll continue to win. So that's both things are true at once at the same time in Iran.
Go ahead.
What do you think will happen to the Muslims in Texas and Michigan?
Yeah, I think you're asking a really great question. I think, first of all, we need to make sure that we as Christians always remember that Muslims are not the enemy. They are the prize. God so loved Muslims that he gave his one and only son, me included, you included. They're not any less loved by God or any more loved by God. However, that being true, Muslims are not the enemy, they're the prize. And so Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan, which is the hot hub, largest mosque in America in Dearborn, Michigan. Muslims in Texas that are building mosques right now, left and right, all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area and all of it. 2 things can be true at once about this. Number one, I believe that they are the treasure of God's heart, and that we need to not demonize the people and figure out a way. We don't want their termination, we want their conversion. So we need to hold that. We need to make sure we don't let go of that while I say what I'm about to say. But I also believe, and this is my belief, I'm not speaking for Matt, I'm not speaking for this conference, but I also believe that the church can't be asleep. And honestly, America can't be asleep about the reality that Islam is coming to America and its intention, Islam, not Muslims, so most of them are good, loving, peaceful people who don't want war, but that Islam is coming to America, and Islam at its very core is against the very things that we hold dear in this nation. They don't want freedom of religion for you. They don't want freedom of speech for you. They don't want freedom of election for you. They don't, you know what I'm saying? Like your very essence of everything that you have in America, they hold as evil. And so we need to be careful that we are not asleep at the wheel, because there is an evil rising in the sense that Islam is coming to America and its goal is to take over ultimately. And so how do you walk with grace and truth in that? How do you love the people, but yet rise up against, like, don't just sit idle while that's happening in this nation, and speak it out, call it for what it is. So I think both of those things can be true at the same time. And so how do we not demonize human beings, but at the same time stand guard and say, well, no. Like, to me, and this is just, again, me speaking. I'm not speaking for Matt, all right? Our president, our future governor, all right? This is just David Nasser. To me, if you're a Muslim who is in the United States with a student visa to study at the University of, I don't know, Iowa, all right? Whatever. If you're here as a guest in this nation, and you've been gifted, there's no entitlement, you've been gifted an opportunity to be in this nation and to study, right? And it's fine. You can be a Muslim. But if now you are fighting against my democracy, my freedom to be a Christian, my freedom, and if you all of a sudden want Sharia law to become the law in America, then I'm like, man, there's the door. Why are you in this nation if you're not for the very thing that this nation, does that make sense? Like, if you come to my house for dinner and you're my guest, that's awesome. But if all of a sudden you start trying to destroy my house, I'm going to show you the door. That's not unchristian. That's me saying, you have not come to be a guest, you've come to be destructive. And so I feel like there has to be a balance by which we hold this, where we don't give up on people. And we're glad that God has put this Pakistani family in our neighborhood. And we don't want to demonize them. But at the same time, we need to be careful that, like, under the freedom of religion, that we're not just letting mosques just continue to open up all over the United States when they have an agenda, which is to take over the government of this nation. Islam started 1,400 years ago in one nation, Saudi Arabia. Today, it is in, over 50 nations as the prominent religion of a nation. And there are several nations that there's no separation of church and state. It's mosque and state. It is what it is. That is Islam's agenda for every nation that it comes to. And so read the Quran, and it's just there. And so I'm not sure why we think that it is not godly to stand guard against that evil. So I don't know if I gave you an answer, but I'm very concerned that people are condoning something and calling it compassion. But at the same time, I'm also concerned that people sometimes demonize human beings that are here that aren't evil. They're just good Muslims that want to see, like, they want to provide for their family, and they want to see a better education for their kids, and they don't mean any harm. So how do we then love them, share the gospel with them, but how do we at the same time stand guard against these mosques that are being built and this agenda that's being had? So I don't know if I stirred up a hornet's nest here.
This is great.
But yeah.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
I want to put a plug in for a conversation. We just did a podcast this afternoon with Teppo, our speaker this morning, about how do we balance compassion and conviction? How do we balance truth and love in the area of sexual funkiness in the country? It's a similar conversation, and I just want to put a plug in that if you're interested in that, applied to that conversation, go listen to that podcast. I saw a hand right over here.
But let me just say, like, their goal is takeover. Their goal is not to just provide more opportunities for those who want to become Muslims. Their goal is to take over the government. Like, their theology is like that's the win. That it becomes the law, that it constitutes our way of life. Well, that's completely against the American way of life. We are a democracy, and so I'm not sure why so many people are asleep at the wheel when all of this is happening right now in plain sight. Yeah.
So I live in a suburb of Houston, Texas, and
Yes,
there are
ma'am.
mosques going up day
Yeah.
in and day out. And they are very aggressive, and they are turning families against, like, Christian family, Christian mother marries a Muslim man, and of course the children now are told that their grandparents are infidels and we need to kill them.
Yeah.
The other thing is, people don't understand that if if Israel exists, then Islam cannot, basically. And I think there needs to be more public information given about this is a highly religious warfare. And there is no existence of Judaism if Islam is supposed to take power. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, in this suburb I live, we've had lots of conferences on just how do you tell a Muslim about Jesus? Because if you talk about the Trinity, that turns them off, because then you're way out in left field because you're not monotheistic.
Yeah.
But I heard you mention that people were telling you about Jesus first, and then somewhere along the line you must have learned about the Trinity, and then the Holy Spirit comes into your...
Yes, ma'am. What is your name?
Carol.
Hey, Carol.
This is going to be the last question.
Sure. Thanks for asking, Carol. Here's what I would say. If God has put, again, we were just talking a minute ago to your question, ma'am, about like, God is, I think it's a blessing that God has put Muslims in our communities. I'm grateful, Carol, that God has put Muslims in Houston, because God has his church in Houston, and God wants to, convert Muslims to Christ in Houston. But so if God has put people like that in your life, here's a couple of things that I would say. I think Muslims believe that Jesus was a prophet, like that Jesus was, and they believe that we got caught, our sweater got snagged, is the way I like to say it. We got caught caught up listening to caught up on the messenger and not his message. And so like we got our eyes off the ball, but the problem with that is that Jesus' message was, I am the way. I am the light of the world. I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection. No man comes to the Father but by me. I and the Father are the same. So like over and over again, his message was, I am the prophecies of old come into fruition. I am the one you've been longing for. I am the king that you've been needing. Does that make sense? And so what I like to do when a Muslim is talking to me and there's like, Jesus never claimed to be God, I'd be like, no. Obviously, they put him on a cross because he claimed to be God. And I like to go into the languaging, and I'm glad to talk to them about that. But to me, the biggest point of distinction in conversation with a Muslim is not necessarily the Trinity and those things. Those are secondary. I think that the biggest thing is grace. Grace. Because you've got Islam and so many other religions in the world, which are basically different variations of works-based theology. This is the laundry list of things that you have to do in order to earn the favor of God, right? So it's doing to become. Whereas in Christianity, we are saved by works, but we're saved by the completed works of Jesus. So we're saved by works, but like we're saved by his works, right? By his wounds we are healed, not by our wounds. And so Islam, so what I like to do is I like to pivot and have the bigger conversation. It's like, let's not talk about secondary things. And I'm not demoting the Trinity. What I'm saying to you is the primary thing, and they all need to be addressed. But if you go to the emergency room and I've got a broken hand, a broken leg, and blood coming out of my ear, I would want a doctor to start with the blood coming out of your ear. We'll eventually get to the broken leg, but I think the blood coming out of the ear, the primary thing is let's get to grace. Let's talk about the reality that your faith is built around this idea of works. And when is works ever going to work? By the way, ask them, how's it working out for you now? The most troubled places in the world right now are not the most secular places in the world. The most troubled places in the world right now are the most religious places in the world. Iran. How's that working? How's works working out for him? How's fear-based, work-based religion working out? It's not working. It doesn't work. Look what it's resulted in. Look what it's done to the 93 million people in Iran that have a metallic taste in their mouth for their religion. So I like to go with them and talk about like, wow, so much of what you believe is you got to do this and you got to do, and it's just do, which is basically do, right? And then Jesus comes in and says, I've done. And so this one's about trying, this one's about trusting, this one's about work, this one's about worship. And so I like to make the distinction of what separates Christianity from everything else is religion built around like your effort. And man's never going to be good enough to satisfy a perfect God. And then Jesus comes on the scene and he says, you don't have to climb the ladder. I climb down to you. And so I like to talk grace with them. And by the way, nothing angers them more than grace, which is why they want to shut this country down. They don't believe that man should be able to make that decision of grace. And so I don't know if that helps, but I like to have a grace conversation with my Muslim friends and stay on that path with them and continue to go, that's why Jesus came, lived a perfect life, died a sinner's death, because he did for you what you could not do for yourself. And so Muslims believe in mercy. Mercy is not getting what you deserve, which is awesome. God is a God of mercy, but we go one step further. We don't stop short at mercy. Mercy is not getting what you deserve. Grace is getting all the stuff you don't deserve. So mercy would be like, you slap me and I don't slap you back. Grace is you slap me and I give you my house. That's ridiculous. That's the beauty of grace. Grace goes so much further than mercy ever does. And so why would we demote God to just a merciful God when God is a God of grace and mercy? So I like to always go to grace with them, always go to grace with them. Because when you talk about grace, grace is really a person, Christ. And I like to go back to him over and over again. The Trinity conversation, typically, once you get the grace thing down, the Trinity conversation begins to make more sense to them later in the part of their faith journey, because they realize, and by the way, like, I don't have it figured out. I believe in a triune God. I fully believe it, but then like, I don't have a full grasp and full understanding of it in my faith. You know, neither does, if you think you do, there's your first sin, arrogance, that you feel like you got it all figured out. Like, none of us have all of these great things about, you know, but at the same time, it takes that faith of a mustard seed, but it's got to be actual mustard. It's got to be actual seed. Yeah. And I think the one seed that's the non-negotiable is like, who is Jesus? And the who is Jesus essence conversation with a Muslim or anyone else comes down to the grace discussion. So have that discussion with them more than anything else. Because honestly too, like, all it's done is make them mean. You know, all it's done is just make them, it's become us against them instead of us for them. And so how has Islam worked out for them in the first place? They also don't like to hear that the most jacked up places in the world are the most religious places in the world. But they are. They are. Because they've destroyed their nation trying to rule with this kind of fear and mongering in order to try to constitute people's behavior. But yet at the same time, homosexuality is rampant in Iran. Heroin addiction is rampant in Iran. Suicide is rampant in Iran. You know? And so how's it working out? Your stuff ain't working, bro. You know? Like, your dish detergent is not cleaning the dishes. It's making them actually poison, dirtier. And so, like, you want to have that conversation, but you want to have it graciously about grace. I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
What are you talking about tomorrow?
I'm not sure. What should we talk about tomorrow? I just wrote a book on hospitality, and it kind of ties into my story a lot. And I know I say that, and it feels like a soft skill, but I think it's a relentless weapon. And I think it's one of the most misunderstood topics. So tomorrow morning, I want to talk about hospitality and a little bit, and I'm really passionate about it. I think you'll enjoy it, but at the same time, I think it'll be very different than what you think when you think you're going to talk about hospitality. All right, but I just did it Sunday at Saddleback, and it was fun to watch it unpacked in the life of people, because, like, you know, you go to a church and you're like, I'm going to speak on hospitality, and all the men are like, really? This just sounds so feminine. By the end of it, they were like, okay, I see what you're saying. That is God's plan A on how to advance the kingdom of God. And so tomorrow we're going to talk about hospitality. And then I was going to talk just about witnessing tomorrow. I'll maybe take a session and just really talk about just the beauty of the Great Commission that God has given us. And how do we just... How are we a people that are going out and telling, you know, the God's strategy on the 1-2 punch on how to love well so that we can go tell. I like John 6:35 a lot in that text, and I'm going to take it back to the feeding of the 5,000. So we'll do that, and then maybe hospitality. But cool. Yeah.
David Nasser, thanks for being here. Thanks
And
for
an
your
honor,
time.
guys. Love y'all. Thank y'all so much for letting me.
I have a great responsibility to get him back to the hotel ASAP, and so do not get in my way of accomplishing that responsibility. Thank you.
It's the toothache things. He's trying to get me to get some shit. Hey, love y'all. Appreciate y'all. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll hang as much as you want, if you want. Thank you so much.
The CC Podcast is part of Christian Crusaders radio and internet ministry, started in 1936 and is one of America's longest-running radio ministries. We are 100% donor-funded, and donations to our ministry are 100% tax-deductible. So if you are encouraged, challenged, or inspired by today's conversation, please consider making a donation on our website, christiancrusaders.org, or mail a check to Christian Crusaders, 7401 University Avenue, Cedar Falls, Iowa, 50613. In addition to our other podcasts, which I mentioned at the front of this episode, I want to mention two of our other ministry partners worth checking out. First, the Cedar Falls Bible Conference, equipping believers with the truth of God's Word since 1922. Visit cedarfallsbibleconference.com for free access to previous conference content or for more information about upcoming events. Second is Power to Change Digital Strategies, an online ministry partnering volunteer Christian mentors with people around the world searching the internet for answers. If you or someone you know could benefit from an anonymous online conversation with a caring Christian adult, go to issuesiface.com. Or if you would like to be a volunteer Christian mentor, please visit p2cdigital.com. That's the letter P, the number 2, and the letter C, digital.com. See our episode notes for details and links, and remember to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. God's richest blessings to you, and thanks again for listening.